Good morning, Amy Jacobson. In for Dan Proft is the one and only Sean from Elmwood Park.
All right, if I'm in for Dan Proft, how come I don't have the controls?
Sorry, honey. You're going to have to be the co-pilot today.
But you know what I am
to be controlled by a woman?
It's cheaper than normal. Here's what I want to say. You know, I've been looking forward to this interview. I really have for a while. So I'm excited about our guest.
Because many people want to know, President Trump, he's appealing to lawmakers and the Supreme Court to overturn the election results. And it was 16 now, as Mike Scott just mentioned, 18 other states have joined Texas in this fight. With more on that, let's welcome back to the program Zach Smith, legal fellow, and he is a judicial studies at the Hertiage Foundation. Good morning, Zach. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, so tell us the latest, and does President Trump have a shot here? Does he have a chance?
Well, basically, the latest is Texas filed a lawsuit against 4 other states alleging that their elections were alleging a host of violations, but essentially their elections were so defective that they violate several provisions of the Constitution. And so Texas filed their lawsuit directly with the Supreme Court, and they're asking the court to essentially overturn the results of the elections in those 4 states and either order those states to hold special elections or have the state legislatures in those states appoint presidential electors. And so the
but why? What's the reasoning behind it? Why? Like what proof do they have?
So basically there are 3 reasons. They say first that because individuals other than the state legislatures made changes to the election procedures in those states, it violated the Constitution's electors clause that allows state legislatures to appoint presidential electors. They say because people in different parts of those states were treated differently, depending on whether they were in a Democratic county or Republican county, that it violates the Equal Protection Clause. And then again, because all of these changes and procedures were so fundamentally unfair, it violates the Constitution's Due Process Clause. So those are kind of the 3 legal reasons that Texas cites in their brief.
And Zach, those are actually not just the allegations. That's exactly what had happened, is that many of these states have circumvented the legislature, which is to set the rules per the Constitution. But the other question I have to you, the Supreme Court refused to hear it in the first, or not refused, but came to a conclusion within 40 minutes of the case being filed. I, as a layperson, how could you possibly come to a conclusion in 40 minutes of a complicated case like this when you have 9 people that are reading it? So to me, it looks like the Supreme Court of the United States has legitimized circumventing the Constitution, in the very least. And to me, they've legitimized voter fraud. So now I have no recourse. This is much like Obamacare, right? I have no recourse. I have no right to disagree. I am no longer, in my opinion, I don't have any sovereignty, and I have to just be led around by what I think is the hijacking of the presidency. Isn't it possible that 1/3 of the country that has filed this case may feel the exact same way, and this could be the start of a secession movement, should it not at least we be given the justice's opinion on it?
Well, I think, Sean, you're actually referring to a separate case that was pending before the Supreme Court, one out of Pennsylvania, that several congressmen and other individuals in Pennsylvania had filed, asking the court basically to stop the certification of Pennsylvania's votes.
Right.
And so the court did basically deny their application to take emergency action. So that case, they denied the request. The Texas case is still pending before the court. The court hasn't decided yet whether or not it will hear that case. And then there is a 3rd case still pending before the Supreme Court, the one involving the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision to require election officials to accept absentee ballots up to 3 days after Election Day. And so that case out of Pennsylvania is still pending. This case out of Texas is still pending before the court. The court hasn't decided yet whether it will take it up. And so, it's certainly, these are certainly troubling allegations. We've seen irregularities out of this election. And so I think it is important that we find out exactly what happened, how we can fix it. But I will say, unfortunately, I think Texas is facing a very uphill battle in terms of whether or not the Supreme Court will agree to hear this case.
Yeah, and Zach, I mean, does Texas have a right to bring a lawsuit over election procedures in other states?
Right. So
I mean, they're not fighting for their
great
own state; they're fighting for others. It's very odd to me.
It is. It's odd because they filed the case directly with the Supreme Court, invoking something called their original jurisdiction. Then there is the question whether they can even raise these issues, whether they have something called standing to bring this suit. So you're absolutely right. So the first hurdle is getting the Supreme Court to agree to hear the case. If they can clear that hurdle, the second one is getting the court to agree that they are even the proper party to raise these claims. And then if they can overcome that hurdle, only then will the court potentially reach the merits of the case. So it is definitely a Hail Mary play, if you will.
So, Zach, the reason I was excited about having you on is that, to me, from my understanding, law is to be my shield. In my opinion, law has become the weapon of the state. Texas has brought this case forward because they feel helpless to the corruption of the Democrat sewers, much like the one I'm calling you from, Illinois. The fact of the matter is people in these sewers have become used to the idea of voter fraud. So although they want you to believe that the cheating is circumstantial on one hand, their other defense of the argument is, well, there's only a little cheating and it should be acceptable. Now that we as a country, through our naivete, have allowed the presidency to become a king, this is a very, very important outcome. When you are in a state that is run efficiently, that does not and pushes back against this kind of corruption, are you just to be dragged along? Or am I correct in the fact that this could very well lead to a secession movement, as the what we're facing is so vastly different than our situation we're in?
Well, I think we really have to look at what are the best practices for running elections, maintaining election integrity. And I don't dispute we saw irregularities, we saw troubling conduct this past election cycle. You know, everyone remembers the pictures of election officials in Detroit putting up cardboard, you know, over the windows, not allowing in election observers, all of those sorts of things. And so I think what we really have to do moving forward is focus on the reforms that will make our elections, ensure that every legally cast ballot will count and that no illegally cast ballots will count, and really be sure to allow sunshine to shine throughout the process, and hopefully, you know, kind of stop a lot of the nonsense that we saw from this last election.
But in the meantime, people who believe like me are told sit in the corner and shut up for 2 years, when the reality is what you've done to me is you've legalized fraud. So I will never participate in this kind of system again. And if you go back, Zach, and you look at the allegations of the Democrats in 2016, and you look at the investigations that happened with all of these voting systems and the hackability and all of it, rather than fix it, they wanted to keep it open, in my opinion, to use it. So to me, this system has been completely bastardized, and I, as an American citizen, have been nullified and negated. So I refuse to participate in it. Now, there's 74 million people out there that voted for Trump. I refuse to believe there's 80 million that voted for this diaper-wearing dimwit. But let's say that it is. You still have 74 million people that are really irritated. Do you not run the risk of saying, sit there and shut up, and we'll let these same idiots who can't run a dime store fix it? I mean, don't you think that ultimately it's going to boil over?
Well, I don't think we have to sit there and shut up. You know, again, we did see troubling conduct this past election cycle. We did see entities other than state legislatures making changes to the electoral procedures and processes, making changes in some states even after votes had already started to be cast. And so I think the first thing we all have to do is let our state legislatures know that that type of conduct is unacceptable, and that at least, you know, as a first line, we're going to hold our state legislatures accountable, because really under our Constitution, under our system of government, they are supposed to be the entity that sets the election rules and procedures. And so I think the first thing we have to do is make it clear to them that we will hold them responsible, and we expect them to fulfill their duty, set clear rules, set procedures, and enact common sense safeguards like requiring photo ID to cast ballots, making sure that absentee ballots are received by Election Day. kind of implementing standard procedures and safeguards for our election process.
And don't you think this mail-in ballots that helped bring down President Trump? Because, when you think about we used to have an election day, and then we had mail-in ballots for the military, and then people, 65 and older, and then that changed. And then no signature matching changed, and then no fault absentee ballots. They keep changing the rules to have, a Democratic victor.
Well, we certainly saw absentee ballot, vote by mail on a scale unprecedented, really, prior to this election. And I think there are problems with that. Vote by mail is inherently less secure than if you go to a polling place and vote in person. And so, again, I think as part of these reforms we need to think about moving forward, it needs to be to encourage everyone to vote in person where possible, or if states are going to allow absentee vote by mail, again, they need to enact some basic safeguards like the signature matching, like requiring photo ID for vote by mail, making sure that if you want to vote by mail, you actually have to affirmatively request to do so, not just sending out blank ballots to everyone on very inaccurate voter rolls. So, again, there's certainly work to be done, much room for improvement. And I think, again, we need to make it clear to our state legislators we expect them to enact these common sense reforms.
Zach,
Right.
I could tell you're a gentleman. I could tell how brilliant you are. There's no question about it. You're a legal fellow at the Mises Center for Justice and Studies. But the reality is when the citizens of states such as mine are being threatened with activity as far as forced vaccinations, have had our businesses seized, have had our lives controlled, have been placed under house arrest, have been taken away the right to disagree with the state. Is law really a shield anymore? And am I really a free man? Or am I just lying to myself?
Well, I certainly think it's still a shield. And, I think President Trump and Mitch McConnell, they deserve a lot of credit because they've made appointing constitutionally committed judges a top priority of their administration. And so now there are literally hundreds of newly appointed federal judges who are committed to protecting and preserving the Constitution. And so that's very encouraging and will have an impact on our country for many years to come.
All right. We don't have a lot of time before this election is officially certified. So what's the next step for the U.S. Supreme Court?
Well, the next step for the U.S. Supreme Court is deciding whether it will take up any of these cases, either the one remaining out of Pennsylvania, this one from Texas. Again, I think it's probably unlikely they take up the Texas case. And so there are still some other issues working their way through the lower federal courts as well. But, as you mentioned, time is quickly running out for these lawsuits. And just pragmatically, it's really hard to see a path forward for a lot of these suits, especially given the tight time frame we're facing.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Zach Smith, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Zach Smith from the Hertiage Foundation, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Job openings up, but hiring is down. And Honda stops production in the UK. China removes 105 apps, including TripAdvisor. Those stories next.
Hi, this is Rhett Rasmussen of BestHotGrill.com. Gift giving occurs year-round, whether for birthdays, holidays, or a special expression of thanks to your best clients and customers. Of course, you want to show your love and gratitude, but you also want to give a gift that provides a positive image of you and your organization. Solaire infrared grills from BestHotGrill.com are both practical and unforgettable. Made in the USA, Solaire has a grill for most budgets, but more importantly, Solaire delivers the wow that everybody likes to receive in a gift. Impressive out of the box, and even more so in use, the Solaire infrared grills are the gift of value that will build relationships. With every great tasting, juicy meal enjoyed from their Solaire, they'll think of you. Step up your gift giving. Learn more about the amazing Solaire infrared grills at BestHotGrill.com. That's BestHotGrill.com, BestHotGrill.com.
U.S. employers advertised slightly more job openings in October, but hiring slipped as the China virus cases rose. The Labor Department reported 6.65 million job openings for the month, but employers hired slightly fewer workers in October than September. Honda temporarily halting production at its plant in the UK, shipping delays linked to the pandemic and preparation for Brexit, leaving the company with a shortage of parts. And the Communist Chinese government cracking down on more than 100 apps, including TripAdvisor. They've been removed from the country's app stores. China says it received complaints about pornography and other improper content. It gave no details of what each app was accused of doing. Please join me for Lou Dobbs tonight, 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock Eastern on the Fox Business Network. This is the Lou Dobbs Financial Report.
Believe it or not, Christmas